So welcome to everyone here at the Lotus Hall, Manchester Buddhist Centre, and to anybody watching on our YouTube channel. And I'd really like us to start off connecting together by saluting the three jewels, and we'll do this in call and response. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Dhammaya. Namo Dhammaya. Namo Sanghaya. Namo Sanghaya. Namo Namah. So yeah, really lovely to be here, week 3 of our 4-week series. And I'm really starting to feel the depths of these 3 protectors now. I hope you're getting a bigger sense each week and being able to bring them into your lives. So we have Vajrapani, Avalokitesvara and Manjusri, all bringing us qualities of the Buddha. So the energy, the wisdom, the compassion. And we've got, Manjusri has gently moved for the day, but we've got this shrine of the 3 protectors that's going to stay with us throughout the year. And it really takes me, I don't know about you, it takes me to somewhere else. It takes me a bit out of this mundane world that I connect with, that I live in. And by having this on the shrine, it means that whether I'm here or whether I'm somewhere else, it doesn't matter if I'm on a walk, if I'm looking at a picture, if I'm sitting with my warm mug of tea, then I can just have a little bit of space to bring them to mind. It might be that I'm thinking of the colours, the deep blue, the white, the deep and bright orange, or even the gold of the Buddha, because we'll be looking at him next week. And maybe that can be part of our practice. That could be our practice, because we're sharing here every week, and we're sharing online. So it doesn't matter if we're here together. It matters that we're here together, but it doesn't matter that we're not always here together. That sometimes we're on our own, and sometimes we're far away. We can bring maybe the qualities, we can bring the qualities, we can sit and look at a picture and just remind ourselves of what we're aiming for, of our practice for the sake of all beings, of what's deepest in our life. So yeah, we can bring qualities, bring aspects to mind, and then we can hold them in our heart and just bring that alive, and brightness and hopefully love, and just never be alone. We're never alone. When we practice, we're never alone. So today, Manjusri. Manjusri has been described as the soft prince with this flaming sword. And for me, it makes that really relevant that we've got Aryarakshita back with us to talk about Manjusri today. So she first came to Manchester Buddhist Centre back in 1988. So with this new connection, the centre and the Sangha here in this location was quite young. And over those 25 years, then she's developed, the Sangha and the building has developed and transformed. And for Aryarakshita, her practice really started in depth with meditation. And it took her a while longer to then connect and think, yeah, the Buddhist path is the path I want to follow the path I want to carry in my life. And she's shown that really strongly. The first way in which she showed this was publicly committing to being a Buddhist with the Triratna Buddhist community, with our Sangha. And she became a Mitra in 2010. And it was roughly every 3 years that something else shifted for her. So 3 years later, she asked for ordination. And 3 years later, she joined the team-based Right Livelihood here in the building. And she became part of the team to keep this centre running, to keep our events on. It was 2019, she received her invitation for ordination, a sign of how deep her practice is, a sign of her going for refuge. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and all plans that she had for her ordination retreat changed, and changed again, and then changed again, and she was going to Spain, and not going to Spain, and going to Spain. And, you know, it was a really tricky time. The pandemic was hard for everybody, but being in this sort of worldly winds is really difficult to be around when I saw people in this situation of when will I go and formally commit again my going for refuge. So over that journey in 2021, very beautifully with other friends from this Sangha, she went to Brecon and became a member of the Triratna Buddhist order and was then named Aryarakshita. And part of that transformation, part of that discovery was then her growing into being the racial, I can't quite remember. She started up the racial diversity group, and she was the sole representative of that group, with great gusto, great energy, up and down the country, all over different centres, all over different retreat centres. She helped that Sangha become part of this Sangha and grow. And it was only last year that she stepped out of that. And what she said was she wanted even more time for joyfulness, for growth, for relaxing. And that's what she's been doing. And very recently, over the last week, she's accepted a new role. I give in. I'm going to look. With the ethical consumer. And actually, I'm really impressed. They're not sponsoring us, but go and have a look. Because they can help us connect with the wider world in a whole new way. So they are really fortunate to have Aryarakshita. I know from first hand how committed she is and how she gets her head down and really works completely for whatever chair she's sitting in, because she's sat in so many different chairs to practice and to work. I'm going to look at my notes because I want to get it right. She deserves for you to know. So she welcomed me here as a volunteer, which is why I got connected with Aryarakshita. And she was really organised, really thorough, really kind and generous with her time, with her knowledge, with her connection. And I realised when I was thinking about her that she's a real investigator and presenter. She just gets in there and puts all her energy, all her knowledge across. And she does that to allow other people to take responsibility and to join in. And it's really empowering, actually, the way Aryarakshita works. And while she was in her racial diversity role, then she came to work sometimes in the office. And even over the last few years, this wish that she has to be more joyful, more relaxed, it started to show more and more. And I don't know what she'll think of this, but one day, just a highlight of the day was we were getting towards the end, And on comes the radio, and there she is, singing and dancing and just really brightening up the space. I've never seen it before in that way, and it was just really beautiful. And it's a great reminder for me of, opening, relaxing, rejoicing in work, in practice. So finally, I just want to say that my experience of Aryarakshita is like Manjusri. She just cuts through difficulties and she shines brightly. And she does this with wisdom and generosity. So really put your hands together and welcome her and thank her for sharing with us today.
Just going to make sure I've set this up right. Thank you, Apeksha Priya. Thank you, everybody, for arriving, for making the effort to be here today. And for those of you on YouTube, online, hello. So today, well, actually, thank you, Louise. I was with Louise about 25 minutes, no, about half an hour ago, and she hadn't yet had lunch. And that reminded me of all the work that goes on behind the scenes for what we see here today in the shrine room. So, I just want a lot of appreciation and gratitude for what's done behind the scenes and for Louise helping to make today happen. So thank you, Louise, and for that lovely introduction. So today we move into the realm of Manjusri. I was going to say the third of our protectors, but the third of the protectors that we've had in our series. But certainly, for many people, one of the three protectors, the Bodhisattva of wisdom. Now, we heard Louise, and we've heard over the weeks how each of the three protectors are a quality of the enlightened mind. But I once remember Parami telling me that they're actually also representations of what we as humans can, what we as humans also have the potential to develop and to step into. So we've had Vajrapani, who represents that energetic, that volitional aspect of being human. And each of the bodhisattvas, well, I'll say this first, each of the bodhisattvas represent this at the highest form, the most refined, the most, the enlightened. We had Avalokitesvara last week, representing the emotional, the feeling tone of what it means, that aspect of us as being human. Today we move into Manjusri, the cognitive, the intelligent rather than intellectual. And I'll say a little bit more about that as we move into the talk. There is a slight difference between the two. And if you like, the bodhisattvas represent a flow of energy for for the sake of all human beings, to remove the suffering for all human beings. So for this afternoon, we're looking at Manjusri. And let's start by meeting him in our pictorial form. How many of you know Manjusri, or have seen a picture of Manjusri, or perhaps recited the mantra of Manjusri? Okay, so there's a fair few. And there's also a few of us that, either the picture, the mantra, or the bodhisattva is new for you. So Manjusri, also known as Manjugosha, is represented here in pictorial form. The name Manju in Sanskrit means beautiful, auspicious, gentle. So that's the first part, the Manju. And in Manjugosha, which is one name that's given to the Bodhisattva of wisdom, the Gosha element is speech. So the gentle voiced one, or the one of beautiful speech. Manjushri, the Shri translates as radiance. So Manjushri, you could say, is beautiful radiance, or princely, gentle radiance, light, if you like. And they sit on a disk of moonlight. I heard the other day that the moon is actually hollow, and I was trying to reconcile that with my image of Manjushri sitting on a disk of moonlight, and I'm just going to go with a disk of moonlight being something that is both, it's a mystery. What is a disk of moonlight? It's just full of, we can just play with that in our imagination. And that disk of moonlight rests on a blue lotus, the Utpala lotus. Now, the Utpala lotus, it's a strong symbol within Buddhism. The lotus representing growth, growing from the mud, the murky waters, representing the growth and development of the human mind. And that growth coming from a place, well, some could say the shadows, or the dark aspects of what we consider, what we want to turn away from sometimes. So the lotus representing that beauty, that potential in each and every one of us for growth and development. And Manjushri sits cross-legged, of a kind of orangey red colour, sometimes referred to as the colour of the lion's eye. It's very kind of like a tawny, yellowy, browny, amber. So there's lots of colours that you could get within that. And on this picture, he's kind of verging on the kind of, closer to the orange. And he's adorned in beautiful silks. Exquisite jewels surround his body, or on his body. And he's young. He's seen as being eternal, eternally young. And that's quite unusual for wisdom. We usually see, we refer to older people as being wise. And here we have a youthful figure representing wisdom. So again, that's just something for me, I just explore that when I sit with Manjushri, and I'll say a little bit more about my journey with Manjushri. They have long black flowing hair. They have 5 crests in their hair, or sometimes a crown in their head. And those 5 crests are referred to the 5 Buddha wisdoms that Manjushri calls upon, if you like. That's where Manjushri, the eloquence and when he articulates, that wisdom comes from the 5 Buddha wisdoms. And in his left hand, he holds a book, a text, sometimes at his heart, and at other times he'll have the stem of a lotus which flows out with a book on his left side. And in his right arm, he has a sword. A sword is a double-edged sword of cold steel, Vajra handle, the Vajra within the Buddhist tradition being something that's invincible and quite powerful. So the cold steel coming from the Vajra handle, and then we have the hot flames dancing on the cold steel. I had bought 2 images, and I'll try and, it was a little rush before we started, but I will try and get the other image out. But the 2 images are quite different. So this one I've got here to my right, quite pictorial. There's a lot of symbolism within this picture. You've got the book, the sword, the colours, but there's also a quality of, it's kind of the ephemeral. You've got, nothing's quite definite, nothing's quite, solid within the picture. That's the kind of what arises for me. And then, well, I'll talk about the image when that arrives on the shrine a little later. The boundaries are blurred, perhaps, pointing to something that's a little bit more mysterious. So how do we make sense of all of this symbolism of Manjusri? Well, I'm going to focus on the book and the sword, probably the 2 most well-known of those symbols. So the book that Manjusri either holds to his heart or holds to one side are what we call the perfection of wisdom texts. They're both a source and expression of the enlightened wisdom or enlightened mind. Now some of us may be familiar with the Heart Sutra, which is one of the perfection of wisdom texts, the Prajna Paramita, which is a translation of perfection of wisdom. And the Heart Sutra, which we will be doing together a little later, starts with Avalokitesvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, in conversation with somebody called Sariputra. Sariputra being one of the key disciples of the Buddha, known for his, his understanding, his wisdom, if you like. And the text, the Heart Sutra, or the Perfection of Wisdom texts, they point to something that is quite difficult to articulate. I'm going to try and move this. Pekshapri or Mark, could I ask you just to gently manoeuvre this microphone stand so it's slightly higher, please? That's great. Super. Thank you. That's a lot better. It means I won't have to move it in and out. So the Heart Sutra, which some of us may have recited within a puja, either a 3-fold or a 7-fold puja, points to something of, emptiness, boundlessness, something what we refer to as shunyata. All things by nature are pure and empty. All things are shunyata. And some of the most famous lines, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Now the Heart Sutra, the Perfection of Wisdom texts, they've got this paradoxical logic, and they're not meant to be understood with an analytical, logical, almost like a conceptual or intellectual approach. They see into the nature that was well beyond our current understanding and our current conceptual framework. And they can often be easily misunderstood, especially when we take them literally. So what Aryarakshita says, particularly about the Diamond Sutra, which is part of the whole perfection of wisdom text, equally applies to the Prajna Paramitara in the Heart Sutra. He writes, if we insist that the requirements of the logical mind be satisfied, we are missing the point. What the Diamond Sutra is actually delivering is not a systemic treatise, but a series of sledgehammer blows, attacking from this side and that, to try and break through our fundamental delusion. It is not going to make things easy for the logical mind by putting things in a logical form. This sutra is going to be confusing, irritating, annoying, and unsatisfying. And perhaps we cannot ask for it to be otherwise. If we were all set forth neatly and clearly, leaving no loose ends, we might be in danger of thinking we had grasped the perfection of wisdom. So the Heart Sutra is something that is not to be understood at conceptual level. It goes beyond words, lists, and understanding that's based on language even. Although this is needed, it goes far deeper. And again, I'll say a little bit more about that. It's almost like a finger pointing at the moon. Not to be understood within our current framework of understanding. So there we have Manjusri in his left hand, holding Perfection of Wisdom texts, either to his heart or on a lotus. In his right hand is the double-edged sword. And he holds this, the double Vajra handle, holding it gracefully with finesse, balanced neatly in his right hand. We might question, why is a bodhisattva, a being set out to relieve the suffering of all beings, holding a sword? A symbol that we might often associate with harm. It was certainly something that I wasn't at ease with when I first came across Manjusri. It was always, not sure about Manjusri and that sword. So we'd, often go to other figures. What Vasantra writes around this, the Bodhisattva of wisdom holding the sword. The Bodhisattva whose very nature is that of compassion and love. How and why does he brandish a sword? Vasantra writes, the sword is so sharp that grasped wrongly it can cut or burn. It is so sharp that a piece of the finest silks just laid across its edge will be neatly divided into two. What makes the sword skillful or unskillful is the state of mind which directs it. Used with hatred against another, it causes damage, it causes harm. Used with understanding of wrong views, love and compassion, especially towards negative emotions and limiting behaviors within ourselves, it creates freedom and the space for new growth. So Manjushri's symbolism is, well, I find it quite strong. And my understanding of Manjushri, the sword and the book, have really deepened and developed since I've been with him, you know, in meditation, visualizing his form and reciting his mantra. And it's through a process really that I've got, I suppose there's an understanding that's unraveling within me, not at an intellectual level, but very much emerging, just emerging from either meditation or through reciting the mantra. And it's the grace and the delicacy which Manjushri holds the sword that really speaks to me. There's something there around the softness within Manjushri and how he directs that sword of wisdom to help alleviate and cut through the obscurations or the views that cause us suffering. And he does that, well, for me, he does that through the language of poetry, through a soft, gentle voice. He does that through the language of the poetry, of the arts, of articulating it in a way that I can receive, that I am able to hear. And it's often through poetry. And Manjushri is associated quite strongly with the arts and with language. And I see that the way that Manjushri holds that sword with such grace, with delicacy, that's how I see Manjushri's wisdom manifesting, if you like, as I visualize and as I recite his mantra. The sword represents our actions in body, speech, and mind. When used skillfully, when we are aligned to our deepest longing, how we're connected to our ethical practice, how we are in the world, we're bringing that with us. In a way, that's Manjushri's sword of wisdom playing out in the world through us. One area that I've been looking at with Manjushri is the topsy-turvy ways, or the upside-down views that we have of the world. Santra refers to them as the topsy-turvy views. He writes about them in A Guide to the Bodhisattvas. And he describes 4 topsy-turvy views that we have as human beings. He describes the first as seeing the impermanent as permanent. So we see that which is impermanent as fixed, as reliable, as solid, if you like, solidifying it. And we expect that process, that object to give us satisfaction. We expect it to give us what what we want out of life. And we see that flow of processes as having substantial, unchanging sense of being. So it's almost a core or a self-nature within itself. And we also see beauty in things that are not beautiful when compared to reality. So that's the 4 topsy-turvy views. So they could be shortened as seeing things as permanent, seeing things as perfect, or wanting them to be perfect, seeing things as personal, i.e. with a nature, a self-nature, an essence. I've not come up with a P for the beautiful, but seeing beauty in the ugly, if you like. Now, some of you might recognise these as the lakshanas, the conditioned marks of, well, the marks of conditioned existence. And what the sword of Manjusri is pointing to is that's not really the case. That is not reality. We live in this illusion whereby those 4 topsy-turvy views, it's how we interpret the world. And in doing so, we cause ourselves and others more suffering. Manjusri Saw particularly focuses on the insubstantiality of all phenomena, the sense that nothing has an essence or nature of its own, independent of other conditions, independent of everything else around it. Now that might feel really abstract and might be hurting some of our brains. So I'm going to bring it down into an actual example for myself. So earlier on, I brought a good friend of mine, Helen Brown, into the centre. She really wanted to come in, and I made the decision to drive in. Those of you that don't know, Helen Brown is deaf and visually impaired, and this is quite we were expecting to be able to park quite near to the centre. So I drove in, and it's a Saturday, of course. So coming in to the centre on a Saturday is something I've not done for a very, very long time. And I'd left enough time. I thought, yes, I've got enough time. But what I didn't take into account the fact that there'd be no disabled parking places around the centre. So we ended up, we had to drive quite a number of times in a circle to try and find a parking space, and we ended up parking. We found some parking. But during that process, Helen remained calm. She remained, it is what it is. And yeah, it's nobody's fault. It just is as it is. And that was in contrast to my mental states at that point, which were beginning to get anxious. So I was beginning to think, oh my gosh, I'm doing a talk today and I can't find a car parking space. So beginning to catastrophize almost, go into that realm of, gosh, what if I can't find a car parking space? Then I've got to walk with Helen from somewhere quite a long way away. And, so all of this was beginning, that proliferation that adds more suffering to that initial experience of what we call dukkha, of, oh, things aren't going as I expected them to go. Okay? So in that moment of anxiety, there was a point where I was seeing the world in a topsy-turvy way. I was fixing myself. This is how it's going to be, rather than just being able to be with that initial moment of, oh, yes, this is different to how I expected it to be. And there is anxiety there. There is a little bit of, oh, yeah, I wish it was different, but it's not. And it's almost as if that anxiety was, it's almost like that was real. That's what I was in that moment. Rather than being able to, well, yeah, rather than being able to see it as within the paradigm of topsy-turvy views, that I'm taking that to be permanent. I'm taking it to be, taking what is life, which is never going to be perfect, yet wanting it to be perfect, wanting it to be free of dukkha. So, what I'd like us to do is just a bit of reflection. I'm going to suggest that we do this for what I'd like us to do is just reflect back, either over today, like I've just done, or perhaps over the past few days, or maybe even week, and bring to mind a moment where you were caught up in either an emotion or a response to something, or you were seeing something in a topsy-turvy way, either as permanent, either as perfect, taking something as having a substantial nature, or taking it, something that's fixed and of substantiality, or looking at something and seeing it as beautiful. Okay? And what I mean by that is more of the man-made, manufactured aspects of our existence. So mobile phones, seeing those as beautiful. It's a strong word to use for a mobile phone. A piece of clothing that you've wanted for ages. So I'll give you a few moments and I'll ring a bell. And when I ring the bell, you can share your reflections with the person next to you. Okay. I'd like to suggest that you turn to the person next to you, or find someone if you're not directly next to someone. And a couple of minutes each, so I'll ring a bell when you can switch over to the other person. Thank you. Okay. In a way, that that example that I used, and perhaps what you've been sharing, is one of those examples how we might know something at a conceptual level. We might have the understanding, or the list, or the phrase, there, at the tip of our tongue. We might know it, we might even recite it regularly. And yet the experience, the direct experience, can often be missed as the narrative, as our conceptual, wordy kind of analysis of the world can really dampen it quickly. And in a way, this is what Manjusri's sword of wisdom is pointing to, is directing us towards. For me, he's been pointing towards my direct experience, my somatic experience from moment to moment. What is it in my body that is there as a sensation? And do I notice the views, the narrative, the stories, the things I think I know, cramping or making small that direct sensation? So Manjushri's sword is something, it's powerful, yet it's delicate. He holds it with grace and he uses it to disentangle us from our views and concepts that obstruct us from seeing reality, from liberation, from freedom. I'm just going to say a little bit about how I came into relationship with Manjushri. To give you a little bit of background, I've always been quite a heady person. I did relatively well at school. Was the first girl to go to university on both sides of the family. Got jobs, did really well. And it was almost as if, my life was from up here, from neck upwards. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and that did involve my body, me having to listen to my body. But again, it was in a very heady way. It was calculating the maths of how many carbs were in a plate, rather than actually how I was feeling when my blood sugar was dropping. So again, that heady, that conceptual paradigm of being in the world was prominent. And then I went on retreat 6 or 7 years ago. I was on a solitary retreat. I was on my own for a week. And, it would have been long, 2018. I don't know how many years ago that was. And I'd been recommended a book to take as study material. A book by Aryarakshita called Living Wisely. And it was a commentary on the Precious Garland Sutta, which is a sutta written by an Indian Buddhist called Nagarjuna. Now, so I'd gone on this solitary. I'd almost set myself a timetable. I'd meditate, 7 till 8:30, 10 o'clock, I'd have some breakfast, 10 o'clock I'd start study until 12:30. So my days were really structured, and I was going to do some serious study. And I did this. I arrived on the Friday, I did it on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, I couldn't get out of bed. There's almost, my body was just almost telling me to do something different in this structured way. Of course, my head started to ask questions. And my body kind of won. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do what I need to do today. And I sat and didn't do anything. And I did that, other than eating. I did that for 2 full days. And towards the end of the second day, I was just sat with a cup of tea. And there was this experience of seeing and feeling the world in a very different way. It was almost as if I dropped in to my actual direct experience of life, rather than allowing my mind, my concepts, my views to interpret my sense of the world. And in that moment, I felt boundless. I felt full of love. I was looking out onto a patch of grass, and there was parts of the grass that were like longer than other parts. There were clumps of longer grass, and amongst those long blades of grass, there were moments of just seeing the sheer beauty and delight of just grass, just blades of grass glistening in the sun. And it felt, and I can still get a sensation of it within my body now, of there's nothing more and there's nothing less than that is needed in this moment. It is just as it is. That was many years ago, and it took a few years for Manjusri to arrive and to point to that experience of that is what the Bodhisattva of wisdom is pointing at. We can take the Dharma teachings, that's part of the process, but at some point you let them go and you sit with your experience or reflections on the teachings and allow something to arise, something to come up that is an expression from your own being of the wisdom that you've reflected on or read or listened to. Okay. Manjusri arrived as an orange glow in my heart at the end of one meditation session. And he made it very clear that he was Manjusri. I didn't know, I virtually knew nothing about Manjusri as a bodhisattva. I'd come across him in the Vimlakirti I'd come across him, the Bodhicharyavatara in the dedication chapter. There were different ways that I'd heard about Manjusri, but I'd never really kind of fully turned towards Manjusri until that morning. And being him just being there with me felt like I need to sit up and take notice. And I've trusted that ever since. And there's something around my relationship with Manjusri which is based on a lot of devotion, which isn't often a word that we put alongside wisdom, certainly a bodhisattva of wisdom, that clarity, that understanding, alongside devotion. For me, my devotion in Manjusri enables me to come closer to what he is pointing at, what he is, what he's trying to speak to me through the language of poetry, through the language of art. parallel to that process is something where I've arrived more and more in my body. My meditation has changed over the years. So a lot more just sitting, being with my experience. And, I am getting better at catching those moments where I tip into thinking that this is a fixed. No, that's not quite what I wanted to say, but especially in meditation, just sitting with my experience has become something that I really value, has become something that has become the basis of my meditation experience. I'm going to just finish with just another reflection, which is something you can just do on your own for a couple of minutes, which is, which of the Buddha's teachings do you feel you need to just sit back with, relax into, allow it to emerge in your own way, in your own expression, for you to be able to manifest that bit of Dharma in your own way? It might be something like, well, how would I put that in my own words? Or how could that piece of Dharma, how has it changed my life? Or how can it change my life? So you might want to bring to mind, you could use the Lakshanas, you could use the Four Noble Truths, you could even, impermanence, you could just take one word, or mindfulness, just taking one element of the Buddha's teachings. Just give yourselves a little bit of time to just sit with that and see if you can move from the heady, thought through process to perhaps a little bit further down. You might want to check in with your heart area, or even further down into your belly. And I'll ring a bell at the beginning and the end. Okay, we'll take a couple of minutes of a leg stretch toilet break. When we come back into the room, we're going to do a very simple puja, a threefold puja, with readings. So it'll be slightly different. It'll be more reflective and meditative. And we will end with the Manjusri mantra at the end. And I'll say a little bit more about the mantra before we start the puja. So a couple of minutes, stretch your legs. going to move into a little bit more of a ritual space, if you like, with Manjusri. We're going to do that with a threefold puja. Now, a puja is it's a way of allowing the Buddha's teachings or the sense of the transcendental to be with us in another way. And it's also a way of us being able to show a sense of appreciation, of gratitude, of devotion to what we refer to as the three jewels. The three jewels being the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And we're going to have readings, a reading before we start the puja. And we'll have a couple of moments just to allow the words, what's being pointed out within that reading, to settle within our being. We'll move into the opening reverence. And after the first verse, Amrita Saki will read a Tashankapa series of 4 reminders. Tashankapa was is closely associated with Manjusri. After the second verse, I will read the Heart Sutra, and I will read it quite slowly and invite you not to recite, not to try and keep up with the words in your own mind, but just try and hear the words as if for the first time. Just trying to see if you can keep that open freshness with the words being received. And at the close, at the end of the third verse, we'll have the Manjusri mantra, and Sue has volunteered to start that off. Thank you, Sue. I'll give you a nod. Okay, so just settling into our cushions, seats.
The path of Manjusri is the path of spiritual swordplay. To follow it means taking up his fiery sword and learning to be an expert at using it. Grasp it wrongly by misunderstanding the wisdom teachings, perhaps taking them literally, then it can never be any more than a finger pointing to the moon. If we become obsessed with the wisdom teachings as words, you are in a worse position than before. Nagarjuna says it is better to have a self-view higher than Mount Meru than having a wrong view of Shunyata. To become obsessed with Shunyata, as though it were a state or a thing or a black hole, is to add another head onto the first one. So we grasp the sword by the Vajra handle of Vajra. So we grasp the sword by the Vajra handle of direct experience. So we need to keep checking ideas and language are true in our experience. Not to work the other way round, limiting our experience of ourselves and the world to what ideas tell us it should be.
Threefold puja. Opening reverence. We reverence the Buddha, the perfectly enlightened one, the shower of the way. We reverence the Dharma, the teaching of the Buddha, which leads from darkness to light. We reverence the Sangha, the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples, that inspires and guides.
The four reminders. This human birth is precious, an opportunity to awaken. But this body is impermanent. Ready or not, one day I shall die. So this life I must know as the tiny splash of a raindrop, a thing of beauty that disappears even as it comes into being. The karma I create shapes the course of my life. But however I act, life always has difficulties. No one can control it all. Only the Dharma can free me and others from suffering forever. Therefore, I recall my heart's longing for freedom and resolve to make use of every day and night to realize it.
Reverence to the three jewels. We reverence the Buddha and aspire to follow him. The Buddha was born as we are born. What the Buddha overcame, we too can overcome. What the Buddha attained, we too can attain. We reverence the Dharma and aspire to follow it. With body, speech and mind. until the end. The truth in all its aspects. The path in all its stages. We aspire to study, practice, realize. We reverence the Sangha and aspire to follow it. The fellowship of those who tread the way. As one by one we make our own commitment. An ever-widening circle, the Sangha grows. The Heart Sutra. The Bodhisattva of compassion, when he meditated deeply, saw the emptiness of all five skandhas and sundered the bonds that caused him suffering. Here then, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is only emptiness, emptiness only form. Feeling, thought and choice, consciousness itself are the same as this. All things are by nature void. They are not born or destroyed, nor are they stained or pure, nor do they wax or wane. So, in emptiness, no form, no feeling, thought or choice, nor is there consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No colour, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of, nor even act of sensing. No ignorance or end of it, nor all that comes of ignorance. No withering, no death, no end of them. Nor is there pain or cease of pain, or cease or cause of pain, or cease in pain or noble path to lead from pain. Not even wisdom to attain. Attainment too is emptiness. So know that the Bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatever, but dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of the delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. All Buddhas of past and present, Buddhas of future time, using this prajna wisdom, come to full and perfect vision. Hear then the great Dharani, the radiant peerless mantra, the prajna paramita, whose words allay all pain. Hear and believe its truth. offerings to the Buddha. Reverencing the Buddha. We offer flowers. Flowers that today are fresh and sweetly blooming. Flowers that tomorrow are faded and fallen. Our bodies too, like flowers, will pass away. Reverencing the Buddha. We offer candles. To him who is the light, we offer light. From his greater lamp, a lesser lamp we light within us. The lamp of Bodhi shining within our hearts. Reverencing the Buddha. We offer incense. Incense whose fragrance pervades the air. The fragrance of the perfect life. Sweeter than incense. Spreads in all directions. Throughout the world.
Om Mara Pachanati, 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 Marapachanadi.
Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Om Marapachanadi. Marapachanadi. Om 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 Marapachanadi. as we just come out of that threefold puja, I'll invite you over this next week, before next weekend's session, to just reflect on those topsy-turvy views and how they may relate to this building, and whether we stay or whether we go, what our direct experience of that is, and what are the additional layers of stories or narratives that we put on that. So just staying with our reflection on what Manjusri's sword of wisdom might be pointing to there. Have a good week. See you next week.